So welcome everybody. It is 2025, the first Tuesday community call of the year. Today is January 7th. My name is Esa Juvonen. I'm a principal product manager in Microsoft 365 platform, community, Power Platform, many things in my to-do list and an agenda. But in this call, this is the Microsoft 365 Power Platform with Microsoft presenters, and this is happening every single Tuesday with certain exceptions. So we did have a small break on the holiday season because we were unable to get Microsoft presenters because everybody was off, which is quite typical on this time of the year. The same actually applies on summertime, but other than that, we are meeting in every single Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. On average, by the way, within the last 2024, our community calls had 280 live attendees, which is pretty nice number on all of these community calls. We do have quite a few of them, but still a lot of people joining them, and great to see a lot of people already on this call. Now, today's agenda. We'll go through a typical set of slides and recapping and latest news, what's happened within the last week or so. I'm not going to cover all of the news within the 3 weeks sequence, but mainly focusing on what are the latest across the different areas within the past week. And then we're going to go to the actual stars of the day, who will be John Miller, who's going to talking about deploying to Azure with Microsoft Teams Toolkit. Really cool, good scenario to go through. So what does the Teams Toolkit, how the Teams Toolkit can be used for deploying to Azure, your solutions, so make automation really easily happening. And then Marc Windle is going to talking about getting started with SharePoint Embedded in Visual Studio Code. There are some updates on this one, so great to see the development on that. So only 2 demos today. Next week, we'll have already 3 demos scheduled. Today is kind of a first week of after the holiday season, so only 2 demos today, which is completely fine as well, which gives us more flexibility on those demos as well. Now, a few assets and resources which you should be already aware if you've been joining on this calls before, but there's always new people within this call, so we want to recap that everybody are accessing and available. Everybody knows about this location. So first of all, our Microsoft Community Learning Videos channel, YouTube channel is the location where all of the recordings are getting published. Also, every single demo which is presented in this community course is getting published on the channel as an individual demo a bit later on the timeline. There's also a lot of live events and live streams happening within the channel, so please subscribe there today. A great location to stay up to date on what's happening within Microsoft 365 and Power Platform. We also have our LinkedIn page and group for discussions and updates. Great way of staying up to date on all of the videos and announcements which are coming out. There's a lot of open source assets available in multiple GitHub locations, but as it might be a bit difficult to find the relevant sample for you, we then have these sample galleries, and they're basically aggregating the information from GitHub, so making it easier in a much more approachable way for accessing and finding the relevant sample for you. I'm going to talk about that one a bit later today. All of these URLs and location and everything else you can find from AKMS Community Home as a one location, one URL to remember. Now, we do have quite a lot of these community calls. That is highly intentional because we want to keep you up to date on what's happening within the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform. This is the Tuesday call, which is happening every single Tuesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time, as you already heard, and the intro. On top of that, we have the monthly Power Platform call, which is community presenters. We have the Office Admin monthly call, which is Microsoft presenters, and then we have community presenter series on Thursdays, 7 a.m. every single Thursday. It's either the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community call or Viva Connection and SharePoint Framework community call every single Tuesday, 7 a.m. No cancellations. We were meeting actually throughout the holiday season as well, and we had a really nice attendance. I think we have more or close to 200 attendees actually last Thursday as well, even though it was kind of a holiday season, which was nice to see. Now, you can download all of the recurrent invites at AKMS community/calls, and you can always check the agendas and upcoming details on the course at AKMS Community Meetup, which is a great location to sign up as well. Now, for a lot of these calls, we do welcome community presenters. This is a great way of, if you're looking into, I want to be an MVP, or I want to get renewed as an MVP, these are great ways of getting those points and getting acknowledged on your community contributions. The only thing what you need to do is sign up the form at AKMS Community Request Form, and then our community leads and community partners will contact you for scheduling you a slot within the call. Depending on your title, depending on the topic what you're planning to show, the call or the demo will be scheduled in a suitable call on those calls which were mentioned in the previous slide. So that's really, really easy to set up and a great opportunity to get started on presenting and learning to present. And by the way, if you're a first-time presenter, we can guide you through there. So we even have a buddy system in place. So if you kind of feel a bit uncomfortable of actually presenting, we can actually join you and help you to actually present by yourself. So really want to teach everybody to have the opportunity to do these things. Now, there's a lot of assets to get started on the Microsoft Cloud at learn.microsoft.com. We do have more than 60, close to 70 modules for Microsoft 365 and more than 100 modules for Power Platform. These are free learning modules, so please take advantage of them. Great assets and a location to find guidance on how to get started on the different extensibility options, different usability options, different features and capabilities which are available in the Microsoft Cloud. Now, I kind of mentioned already the samples a bit. So we do have more than 2,100. Actually, we have even more because we realized that the sync has not been working earlier today. So we are closing into 2,200 samples from Microsoft and community. So if you go to the AKMS community samples, this is a one location where we're aggregating all of the samples from Microsoft and from community which have been contributed. So making super easy for you to find a relevant sample for you. This location contains samples for Microsoft Lists, for Power Apps, for Power Automate, for SharePoint Framework, for Microsoft Teams, Copilot Studio, Copilot extensibility, and all of that, and a lot of other stuff as well, like scripts automation and all of that from a one centralized location. And you can easily just use the search and filter mechanism to find the relevant sample for you. So please take advantage of that one for inspiration and ideas, or maybe a starting point for the solution which you need to build for your customer or for yourself. Now, as you find the sample, you might be wondering wait a minute, I'm not super familiar with this stuff, or maybe you're looking into contributing and you don't quite know how to get started on contributing. We do have our Sharing is Caring initiative, and this is really designed to help you to get started to be more closely involved within the community. If you go AKMS Sharing is Caring, you can find more details about the different schedules and events which are coming up. We're updating this relatively soon. We're just scheduling them with our MVPs. So making sure that starting from mid-January, February, March, and so on, there's going to be a lot of events where you can join to start learning how to contribute or maybe consume the samples or build something else or contribute on documentation. There's a lot of ways of contributing within the community. As you then contribute, we want to award you for those contributions. So we do have our community recognition program. 2025 batches are coming up as we speak. On 2024, we had a lot of different batches available. So depending on your contribution timing, contribution style, contribution location, you were actually awarded in a different batch from Pro, Free, Fresh Rangers, all of the slides of samples are really good examples of these things. We'll see some of kidding. Now, just to call out here, there are still a lot of PRs which are still pending to get merged. So those are getting processed as we speak and within an upcoming week. So you will still get the Season of Kidding practice and Snippet Sorcerer and all of that. So we do apologize. There have been a bit of a delay on some of this stuff, but it does actually require also a bit of work on our side to make sure that your contribution is valid before we just give you the badge. So there is a validation program behind of all of this. Now, if you contributed and you haven't received a badge and you haven't signed up the form, please go AKMS Community Recognition. That is a form you need to fill in to opt into this program. Otherwise, we cannot send you the actual badge, which you can share within the social media. Now, moving on a bit about the event. So we do have a lot of cool events coming up on the spring 2025, starting actually in January 29th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. There is a special SharePoint event happening from concept to creation to impact. And this is a event which is live streamed from the YouTube channel, showcasing the art of possible within SharePoint. There's a lot of cool capabilities and innovation happening within the Copilot and agents and custom portals and custom layouts and pages and all of that stuff. And all of those are getting covered within that event. If you go AKMS SharePoint event and blog, you will get more details on that one. On top of that, we have the Powerful Devs conference and Hack Together happening in February, and February 12th to 28th, 2025. April, who's on the call, I saw April on the call as well, is helping on coordinating all of this stuff. Please check out AKMS Powerful Devs for more details on that one. Awesome hackathon for Power Platform side as well. Now, as part of the SharePoint event, we are actually going to then share that we will have a share hack, which is happening in the March 3rd to 14th, 2025. And this is really a hackathon designed for designing SharePoint and also creating like an inspirational SharePoint landing pages and portals and designs. And you can actually join on this one, even though you would be building, or if you're a developer building cool looking SPFX stuff. So there are multiple hackathon categories which will be published a bit later on this side. So there's out-of-the-box designs, out-of-the-box capabilities, out-of-the-box Viva connection, but then there's the go crazy with SPFX option as well within this hackathon. And there's going to be awards available as well. But more details on that one as we move along within the upcoming days and weeks. Now, on spring, a bit longer in the spring, in May 6th to 8th, we have the Microsoft 365 Community Conference coming up. A lot of great sessions and speakers already published on this one. Followed by that one, we have the European Collaboration Summit happening in Düsseldorf, 26th to 28th of May. Great opportunity if you are in the Europe side of the pond to actually catch up with everybody in the community. Now, moving back on the US side, TechCon 365 is happening this year in Seattle, Atlanta, and Dallas again, starting from June, then followed August and November. Great opportunities of catching up with community and seeing great presenters and other attendees. And then, of course, we have the Power Platform Community Conference happening in October 28th to 13th, 2025. And the last but not the least, definitely the European SharePoint Conference is happening on 1st to 4th of December 2025 in Dublin. By the way, on the ESPC, we do have a special one-day only ticket launch exclusive, 2 tickets for the price of 1 happening on 22nd of January 2025. So if you're looking into coming into Dublin anyway on end of 2025, you probably want to take advantage of this great offer, 2 for the price of 1 in 22nd of January. So please check out that one at the ESPC details. On top of these kind of a prime conferences or bigger conferences, we have a lot of smaller conferences happening all around the world in the different locations. And these are great opportunities to catch up with the community. And I will just mute, there was additional noises behind, so that's good. So we do have, if you go to communitydays.org, you can see all of the different events happening all around the world, from United Kingdom to United States, Arizona, Costa Rica, Dubai, and so on. So a lot of different events happening all around the world. Please take advantage of this and meet other people in the community. Great opportunity of learning from other members of the community as well. Now, let's then go to a quick recap on the latest news, what has happened within the last week or so. So not that many news. I will actually copy the latest news in the chat. So if you have access on the chat, you can have access on that list. So this is the latest news coming from Microsoft within a week or so. Mainly focused on Microsoft 365. Funny enough, there was no news on Power Platform unless I missed something. But I'm pretty sure that there will be more news and updates on that side this week as well. Now, before we go to the group photo of this week, just a quick recap also, we do have our Copilot prompts series happening. If you go AKMS PMP prompt library, this is a great location of actually learning how does the prompts look like, or how does the prompt could look like in Microsoft 365. And this week's prompt of the week is coming from a really fresh new Microsoft 365 MVP, Mohammed Amar, who had a example on provide a summary with at least 10 announcements on from and so on. So really cool example of how to use the Copilot to help you to categorize things, get the insights or inspiration for your own text. That's what the Copilot is really good on. It's not intended to replace you. It's there to help you. For example, when you're writing something, getting inspiration, you can always ask input from the Copilot on those things. Cool. Before we go to the actual stars of the day and the demos, let's do a quick group photo. We are already at the right mode here. Let me enable my camera as well. So I will be there as well. And let me, and I wasn't supposed to click there. Where is the themes? Let me flip you back in there. And then, and I should be able to get the Camtasia here as well. We are pixel perfect today. And there's a cat. Excellent, Todd. Todd brought a cat as well. So we do have 50 seats in the room. Where's the camera? There's the camera. Am I? Yes, I'm on the middle. We do have 50 seats in the room. I can see Mark there. I can see April there. Let's wait a few more seconds before we start recording. And then 3, 2, 1, and maybe we will start recording. Let's do some hand waving, everybody. We will share this in a GIF in a social media. Thank you for joining once again in a community 2025. Yay! Awesome to have you here in this course, and looking forward awesome year with everybody on this call. Thank you. Excellent. Good. I guess it's time to go to the actual source of today. So we'll start with John Miller, moving into our focus on the Teams Toolkit. So deploying to Azure with Microsoft Teams Toolkit. So if you're building scenarios where you have code which has to be running in Microsoft Azure, you can actually deploy that directly from Microsoft Teams Toolkit. And then we move into Marc Windle after that on using or building SharePoint embedded solutions with Visual Studio Code. But John, I can see you on a call. I think we are ready to go.
Cool. Thanks, Vesa. Let me share my screen. All right, can you see my screen?
Screen sharing. Yep, all good.
Okay.
Take it away.
Cool. All right, so welcome back if you've been following along. If you haven't, this is a series I've been doing on Teams Toolkit and kind of an introduction to kind of each piece of the toolkit. And so here's a look at where we are and where we've been. So we started with some introductions on the extensions and the CLI. And today I'm going to just quickly show how to use Teams Toolkit to deploy to Azure. So in the previous sessions, I showed how to use VS and VS Code and the CLI to kind of run your projects locally, but I did not show how you can get that thing into Azure into hosting. So we'll look at. And then I think related to this, but slightly different, is how you might do this with CI and CD using the CLI tool, which is what I will be doing hopefully next week. And so, all right, let me jump over to Visual Studio Code. All right, so we're in VS Code. And I have the toolkit installed, which you can get from the marketplace. And I've already created a project. So I've create a new app, and I've chosen, I think, a basic bot here just to keep things simple. So these are our templates. And if you haven't seen this, then I would encourage you to go back and look at the recordings for the VS Code session. It kind of goes over this. And so I have my project in here. It's my Teams app bot. And one of the things that we include in the templates is this infra folder. And by default, we give you some opinions on how to host this in Azure using bicep files. And so this gives you infrastructure as a code or infrastructure as code. So you can use bicep to provision these resources in Azure. And what we have by default here is most of our templates follow the same format. But one thing I want you to take away from this is that you don't have to use this one if you don't want to use bicep, or you don't want to host in Azure, or you don't want to use this opinion. You don't have to do that with the toolkit. We just give it to you by default. You could use Terraform if you want, or whatever you want to do. But we have this Azure file, and then in here are kind of the main resources. So one of the differences for our templates is we tend to use user-assigned managed identities instead of enter ID apps. For this by default. So you can see that's what we're provisioning here. If you're not familiar with bicep, that's okay. I'm not that familiar with it either. I know just enough to be dangerous. But the important thing is you can go in here and you can tweak this how you want. But you can look through here to see what the toolkit does by default. And so since this is a bot, we need some way to handle an identity. In this case, it's a managed identity. And we need somewhere to actually host this code. And so we have, I think, an app service by default. So that's what this code is. And then we also need an Azure bot service. And so that's what this is configuring. And then the specifics for an Azure bot service are in this file. So there's just a bunch of syntax in here that Azure likes using bicep for doing that. So you can see we configured this bot service to work in Teams. And the toolkit has some cool features with the environments, which I covered in previous sessions, but everything that we provision and the toolkit automates is saved as variables. And in this case, we're just using environment files. And the parameters file for bicep is a way for the tools to input things. So in this case, this is the syntax, it's a $, and then some brackets, and then the name of your environment variable. And there's only one input for this template, but if you use some of our more complicated templates, there'll be multiple things here, and the tools basically can input them. So that way you can read them inside your infrastructure files. All right, so that's a little bit of the setup. And if you're in VS Code or you're in Visual Studio, we do have some UI or commands in VS Code to run these things. it's actually provision and deployed, like use these bicep files. And that's this lifecycle tab over here. So there's a provision, deploy, and a publish button. And what those correspond to are, in our automation files, we have these lifecycle stages: provision, deploy, and publish. So these are our automation steps. And you can see what provision does: creates a Teams app. It's going to call arm deploy, and this is really where we're going to use our bicep files. And we can see if I apparently have all this collapsed. Here we go. So you can see it's going to read that Azure bicep file. It's going to use the bicep CLI, and it's going to provision. And it's going to use this account that I've signed in. So Teams Toolkit gives you a way to manage your M365 or Azure account. These are my demo accounts. So you can just click provision, and then the tool, I've already done this to make sure it works, but it'll let you know it's going to cost, possibly money for this, and you should review that before you provision this, because it's actually going to create things in Azure. So I'll go ahead and do that. And you can run provision multiple times if you want, but you only really need to run that if the bicep files change, or it's the first time you're trying to do this. So we'll provision, and it's going to go ahead and create those in my Azure subscription. And I probably shouldn't have clicked that because I could have saved myself some time here, but looks like it's not going to take long. So once I provision, okay, those resources are now created. So that's the app service, the bot service. It's connected all of those things together for me. And all I need to do now is actually get my code into there. And so I can just hit deploy, and it's going to, if we recall what I just showed you, deploy is going to, you can also click here if you want, but deploy is going to go through these steps. So if you're ever confused what the toolkit's doing, you can jump into the YAML file and see what the steps are that it's doing. And that's what these steps refer to down here, the 3 of 3. In this case, there's 3 steps here. There's 2 different npm commands here. One is install and one is build. And then there's an Azure App Service zip deploy here is the 3rd step. So it's going to go through those 3 steps. And the toolkit has a bunch of output on what that's doing, and shows you some values there. If you want to dive into like your app ID, or I'm in a step here, I'll show you the link that it's going to open. All right, so once that's provisioned and deployed, I'm not going to publish because I'm not going to actually publish this to the team store. I'm still this is like my dev environment. It's not like a production environment. So you can see here, my dev environment, it says it's provisioned, so I can preview the app. And I think if I click this, it's going to try to open it in this Teams client, but I do want to get the link. So I'm going to just go ahead and do that and go down here, get this link. And let me get a browser where this will work. I don't want it to open in the Teams client that I am currently talking to you folks on. So I will go over here, put that into the browser. And here's my app install process. I did run this earlier, so we should still see my messages from this morning. So I can go ahead and open that. Yep, here's what I did earlier. So here's my bot. This is now running in Azure, and it's just a basic Echo bot, so should just reply with Echo. So there you go. So now it's deployed in Azure, and I can go into the Azure portal and investigate those resources if I need to do anything about it, or I can use the toolkit to continue provisioning and deploying. And that's pretty much all there is to it. In the next session, I will show how you can use CI/CD and the CLI to do these commands yourself. It kind of is an automation step. So if you don't want to do it from Visual Studio Code or from Visual Studio, then you could put it as part of your CI/CD system. So if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out. Happy to chat with you directly. Or if you want to get started, then I will share this link with you. So aks.ms/ttk. That's a good way to get started with all things Teams Toolkit. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, John, on that one. Just double checking that my audio is on. The audio is on. Excellent. You can hear me. That's good. Excellent. We're right on schedule. This is really cool, and we're looking forward on the CDCI for next time as well. I can see on the schedule because I can see the next week's schedule slide as well, waiting. But today we'll move then to Marc Windle. Marc is from the SharePoint Embedded team, and we're going to have an update on the Visual Studio Code side and how to get started there.
Awesome. Can you all see my screen?
Yep, all good. Take it away.
Excellent. Thanks, Vesa. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about how you can get started with SharePoint Embedded using Visual Studio Code. Seems to be the theme for today. Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Marc Windle. I'm a product manager working on SharePoint Embedded. Now, before I start talking about how you get started building your own SharePoint Embedded apps using our Visual Studio Code extension, I want to give you a quick primer on what SharePoint Embedded is for those that aren't yet familiar. At a high level, SharePoint Embedded, like its name implies, provides a way for you to embed SharePoint storage into your custom application. It's a headless platform as a service that offers a set of pay-as-you-go APIs on Microsoft Graph, which allow you to store and manage content in a Microsoft 365 tenant. So it effectively allows you to create a custom content partition that is specific to your app and lives within a user's tenant. And the key benefits are that you can bring core content management, Office desktop and web collaboration, security trim search experiences, and Copilot powered experiences into your custom application, all built into the platform. The innovation that makes it all possible is that content is stored within your Microsoft 365 tenant. Even if you're making a multi-tenant app, content is stored within your customer's tenant. So it's stored in there. And that's kind of what makes all the benefits possible. So if you're an administrator of a tenant and you're using an app built on SharePoint Embedded, you and your organization get a whole bunch of benefits kind of right out of the box. You don't need to grant broad permissions to a custom app, giving it access to all of your organization's content within SharePoint and OneDrive. You can give it, access to its own content partition and just that content partition. So it's really quite specific. And then also the content is stored within your Microsoft 365 tenant when you choose to have an app that's built on SharePoint Embedded. And so therefore all of your content security and compliance policies just automatically apply. You don't need to worry about whether that app is built those for you. They're just built into it because it's stored within your own content partition. Content within SharePoint Embedded is stored within this thing we call a file storage container, or just a container for short. Containers are kind of like headless document libraries from SharePoint. There's some important differences, but that's kind of the way to think about them. It's a document library that is headless, that is controlled by your custom application, and so you can read and write content within there. Now, a custom app can be installed on many different tenants, and when an app installs itself on a tenant, it can have many containers, up to 100,000 within a tenant. And then each of these file storage containers can have, many terabytes, up to 25 terabytes of content. And so they're also a security boundary and a scale boundary. So that's what these containers are. And I'm going to show you how you can kind of create one of these apps and store content within there in just a minute. But ultimately, one of these containers is really just a drive in Microsoft Graph. And so if you're familiar with interacting with content, like the contents of drives through Graph APIs, then you should already be familiar with working with SharePoint Embedded containers. They're pretty much the same thing once you have a container. Here's how you can cook up your own SharePoint Embedded app, and I'm going to show you with a demo just after this, but I want to kind of give you an overview. The first thing you have to do is create an Azure Entra app registration. And that really is just, how you can call Graph APIs and how you can associate the ownership of the containers that your app creates. Also, and this is a new concept with SharePoint Embedded, you have to create what we call a container type. And this is really just, defining the ownership for all of the different containers that your application owns across all of the tenants that your app is running on. And so you have an app registration within Entra, and you have a container type. Those two things are really what you need to have a SharePoint Embedded application. And then you can go, register that container type on a tenant, on many tenants, including your own tenant, and then create containers within there. And so I'll show you how to do that. So I'll skip into the demo now. And again, we're going to do this in VS Code. So if you haven't already, you can go over to the extensions pane and search for SharePoint Embedded. And that should come up. So this is the SharePoint Embedded Visual Studio Code extension. I already have it installed, and so I'm going to actually go over here into that. And so it just shows up on the activity pane on the left. So it's SharePoint Embedded. And then I'm going to create a trial container type. So there's two types of container types you can make. One is trial, and that's free to get started. You don't need to pay for it. The other is a paid container type. That one requires a paid Azure subscription. So I'm going to use the free trial container type. And as I mentioned, the first thing I need to do is create an Azure Entra app registration. This will do that for you. So I'm going to create an Azure Entra app. I'll just accept the default SharePoint Embedded app. And that should go create my Entra app. There it did. And then I'm going to give a name for this container type. So I'll just say like demo CT. And okay, so it created this container type and the Entra app registration. Now it's asking me if I want to register that on my local tenant. As I mentioned, so when you create a container type, that is something that you can register on many tenants, many M365 tenants. I'm going to actually install it on my own tenant. Now, in order to do that, I have to consent. I have to grant admin consent to this app that I just made. And so I'm going to do that. It's happening on my other screen here. But it's the standard kind of admin consent flow. All right. So I have granted consent. Now you can see it's waiting for that to propagate. So it does take up to a minute or so for that consent to be applied. Now it's registering the container type. Okay, cool. So what I basically did through all of this, just to kind of boil it down, I used the SharePoint Embedded Visual Studio Code extension to create a SharePoint Embedded application. And then I effectively registered it, or kind of, you can think of it as installed that on my tenant. And so this is what we have now. I've got it, and I can go create containers on this tenant. The first thing I'm going to do here actually though is I'm going to right click on this SharePoint Embedded app, that Azure Entra app registration that we made. And then there's a couple of options that we can do. Some of the tasks that are automated within this Visual Studio Code extension. One is run sample apps. And so we have a number of sample apps, and some of them are built into the extension. I'm going to click on this one. And so what this is going to do is clone our sample app repository and then kind of inject all of the settings that we have here. One of the things I want to do is create an app secret before I do that. So I created a secret for the app. And now I'm going to actually clone the repo. So I'll just pick a spot on my local machine to clone our sample app repo. And that's what it's doing in the background. It's going to clone the repo. Once it's cloned, it's going to inject all of the configuration variables and secrets and stuff like that into that cloned repository, so that I can just kind of immediately get started running this sample app. So looks like that is completed. Some automatic pop-ups and stuff because it's detecting different things and projects in here. So I've got this sample app repo here. I'm going to go and open up this project here. I'm going to open up an integrated terminal for the sample app that we just opened, and I'm going to run just npm run start. That's going to take a little while. It's going to, of course, download all of the different npm libraries. So I'm going to let that kind of run in the background while it's installing all of the dependent libraries. We're going to go back to the Visual Studio Code extension for SharePoint Embedded and do a few things. I think what we're going to do is show you how you can kind of get started exploring the APIs with Postman. So again, I'm going to click on this app that we created. I'm going to set up Postman collection. I'm going to export the environment settings file. And that's just going to ask me, make sure I'm okay saving that file. It does contain the secrets on here. So I'm going to save it somewhere on my local file system. I'm going to put it into downloads here. Okay, so that just exported the environment file. And now what I can do is actually open up Postman. I happen to have the Postman Visual Studio Code extension. It's nothing to do with SharePoint Embedded, but it's just a handy way to explore APIs. So you can see I have the SharePoint Embedded Postman collection already set up and ready to go here. What I need to do though, before I can use that, is import that file that we just exported. So I'm going to press the import button, choose file, and go to my downloads folder and grab that. And that should load. It just show you what's going on here. So when I talk about like injecting all of the configuration, so we just made this SharePoint embedded app, and there's a bunch of parameters now that we can use for it. So the container type ID, that is the unique ID that will define the ownership for my app for all containers across the world. And then the client ID is the Azure Enter App Registration ID or client ID. That for the app that we just made, and then a bunch of other properties, including a secret. So this is the environment file that has kind of everything we need. Now I'm going to go and go into the delegated folder of the SharePoint Embedded Postman collection. Go to the authorization tab. I'm going to make sure my environment's selected. So we have this demo CT that we just made, and I'm going to try and get an access token. So I'm going to generate an access token from that. It should open up a browser window where I can kind of sign in to this account. That's again happening off screen. And hopefully if that works, oh, looks like authentication failed. I'm going to try it again. Sometimes for some reason it doesn't seem to work the first time, or I may need to regenerate a secret. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to actually regenerate a client secret here. And that's simple to do. So you can go into the credentials and I can generate a new client secret. Okay. And then I will try to actually regenerate that Postman environment file. And save it. Again, I'll just save it into the same place here, into downloads. Okay. And then I'm going to go back into Postman and kind of re-import that. So I'll go to my environments, remove that one that we had imported, and I will import that newly exported one. And hopefully that works. There it is. Okay, I'm just going to close that, go back to this delegated folder here. Make sure that environment is selected and see if we can generate this access token. Okay, for some reason it's not happy with me. Let me try to use advanced configuration. I'll try to get rid of this prompt here. I'll try it one more time. There it goes. Okay. All right. So looks like I've got an access token. Now what I'm going to go do is go into the containers folder. And so there's just a bunch of API requests. So the intent of this Postman collection is that you can kind of explore some of the APIs that we have. And so this is the list containers request. So you can see here, the API is on graph, and there's a containers endpoint, and I'm passing in that container type ID. I send that off, and I should be able to list all of the. Doesn't seem to be. It looks like the demo gods are not happy with me today. I'm going to try and hit this again. Make sure that the right container type ID is getting selected. Okay, doesn't seem to be working very well. Well, looks like I'm having issues here getting things working. So The main thing, though, is just I wanted to show you is that getting started with the Visual Studio Code extension for SharePoint Embedded is quick and easy. We've created an app here. I'm having some authentication issues, so I'll have to cut it short, and maybe I can revisit in the next couple of weeks and kind of complete this demo. But doesn't seem to be working for me today, so I'll have to leave it at that. And I will complete this demo in the coming weeks for you.
Cool. I think we're good. No can do. Every now and then these things do happen. It might be a bit on sideways on the tenant or whatever. So no can do. So don't worry about it. Let me take the screen sharing. I think as we don't have a third demo of today, we will close a bit earlier, so that's completely fine. Next week, we actually do have 3 demos. I added some assets and resources on the chat related on SharePoint Embedded, a great setup of discussions and questions already going on the chat. So thank you, actually, the SharePoint Embedded team answering on those. Now, for next week, we do have 3 demos, as mentioned. First of all, thank you, John. Thank you, Mark. On today, and next week John will continue on the Teams Toolkit and introduction CI/CD, as in continuous integration, continuous deployment with Microsoft Teams App CLI. So how do we automate stuff, for example, in GitHub using the deployment using the Microsoft Teams App CLI? Then Shefali Patankar is going to actually share the latest on Power Platform Connector and Copilot extensibility. So that team is joining again us on a monthly update on what's happening on that side, all of the different connectors and things, and a lot of innovation on that side happening as well. And then Kartik Gilliam, who's a really fresh joined Microsoft previously as a vendor, nowadays as a Microsoft employee, and he's going to talk about introduction to the Teams AI SDK. So what is that all about, and what does it actually give us in this age of AI and Copilot? So it is a great option to take advantage for orchestrating on the incoming requests. But that's on next Tuesday, on 14th of January at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and you can download the recurrent invite that AKMS community MS speakers call invite URL. Now, in the meanwhile, we do have, for example, time today. You can join on the Discord server. So if you are familiar with Discord and you're spending time in Discord, go to AKMS Community Discord and you can join our Discord server, where we do have more than 2,400 members helping each other with the different technical questions and chatting and all of that engagement in there as well. This is not intended to replace any of the other forums. It's just a option available for those who are more familiar with Discord as an engagement model. We also are always looking for feedback around these calls. This is super important for us so that we can show the value of these calls for our ecosystem. Show the value of this call to our management chain and the leadership on what they means for our ecosystem. So if you do have a few minutes of your time, for example, right after this call, because we do have some extra time today, please fill in the form and give us feedback on what works, what doesn't work, and what do you feel about those calls. And if you have ideas on how we can improve, please do let us know. That helps on us keeping these calls alive also in the future. Thank you for that. But that's it for today. We're going to close up a bit earlier today. We're going to say 15 minutes. That's really cool and not necessarily a bad thing at all. The recording will be available within 24 hours at Microsoft Community Learning YouTube channel at the AKMS Community YouTube. For us on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, or Twitter, to stay up to date on when there is new material available. We try to post everything in all of the different locations so people can stay up to date easily on what's happening within the community. And as mentioned, the next community call is on January 14th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. All of the different calls at the AKMS community calls. We do have a lot of calls this Thursday. We do have the next call happening at 7 a.m. Pacific time. But I think that's it for now. I think let's save some time and let's catch up on other things for the extra time. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, John. Really, really great call. And let's stay up to date. So feel always give us feedback. We are building all of these applications and solutions for you. So please give us feedback on what works and what doesn't. But that's it for now. Thanks, everybody. Let's stay in touch. Cheers. Bye-bye.